Thank you very much indeed, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of the CyCon for inviting me to deliver the EU views on the cyberspace for this global expert audience. And it's a great pleasure for me to be here today and to discuss this new and ascending security issue in Europe and worldwide. Let me allow just a few words on the External Action Service. The External Action Service of the European Union is, in very simplified words, responsible for the foreign policy issues. So if you like, it's comparable with a sort of foreign affairs department in a state. We have also components which are more operational. We are, as you may know, running for the time being 16 missions all around the world, 5 military missions, and the other missions are civilian missions. And we have, of course, delegations which are similar to embassies all over the world. Allow me to start with a global overview what the EU has done to advance cybersecurity. I will then also like to address some additional issue related to military defense, to international law, norms of behavior, the issues of confidence building measures, and also maybe some words on internet governance. So it's in a way a bit broader approach, but as you know, the European Union, in difference to NATO, is responsible or has a different mandate, which in that sense is a bit larger, and it comprises, in a way, all cybersecurity related issue. During the last decade, the EU has done several initiatives related to internal market, related to justice and home affairs, areas such as, for example, the directive to harmonize cybercrime in all member states, or the creation of the European Network and Information Security Agency, ENISA, or on the criminal side, the Europol, European Cybercrime Center, EC3. But all these actions have been, in a way, a bit fragmented. And so we tried with a new initiative in 2013 to bring these different approaches together and have a more, let's say, coherent approach on that. And this is why we adopted in 2013 a cybersecurity strategy of the European Union for an open, safe, and secure cyberspace, which is, in a way, the first EU comprehensive policy document on cyberspace issues. That strategy comprises different aspects related to internal market, to justice and home, to common foreign and security policy dimension, and of course also comprising the cyber defense angle. The strategy was supported by all 28 member states, and it was approved by relevant council conclusions in June 2013. There have been identified 5 objectives in that strategy. First is achieving cyber resilience, then reducing cybercrime. Thirdly, developing cyber defense. Fourth, developing industrial and technological resources for cyber security. And then also to establish an EU international cyberspace policy. With the strategy, there was also a technical legislative proposal by the European Commission to strengthen cyber security, and that is called the Directive on Network Information Security, the NIS. That proposal is now in its final round, so to say, in in the process of being adopted, and we hope that it will be adopted this year. I now will come to the military domain, and there has been tremendous development of the cyber capabilities over the last year. It has been and become clear that this constitutes an integrated part of potentially every future conflict, and we have heard about that already from the previous speaker. The EU here again has reacted, and we have adopted the EU cyber defense policy framework in 2014, actually in November. This defense policy work sets out the priority areas for cyber defense within the common security and foreign policy and clarifies the roles of the different European actors, while of course fully respecting the competence and responsibility of our member states. It tackles various subjects such as the cyber defense capabilities of member states and what we can do to enhance them, the protection of our own networks, which are used by the EU entities, be it in headquarters, be it on missions or operations, the aspect of training, exercises, and education, and then, last but not least, the issue which was also mentioned beforehand, the cooperation with relevant international partners, and one of the most important parts for us in that context is, of course, NATO. And I'm happy to see some of colleagues from NATO with whom we have met in our regular staff-to-staff cyber consultation, and Mr. Ambassador was already mentioning it a bit. I'm also very grateful for the cooperation that the Cooperative Cyber Defense Center of Excellence here in Tallinn and the European Defense Agency have set up a good cooperation, and we hope to reinforce these links in the future. We will present sort of report already after 6 months of the adoption of that cyber defense policy framework during this month. I will not set out all the achievements, but just to name a few. One is that the Commission has now issued a communication on the digital single market strategy, and I'm mentioning it because it comprises also the famous issue of the private-public partnership, and I'm sure that in the next intervention we will hear something more of that. That is a challenging issue. I think we are all in favor to do something there, but to put it in practice is sometimes something we really have to think on. We have also launched studies related to civil defense markets, and that is complemented by relevant work from the EDA. On training, member states have launched exercises and education on EU military requirements. We have done awareness courses. We also had EU representation and participation as observers in the NATO cyber exercise, or also in the Locked Shield exercise. NATO has been accepted as an observer in the Cyber Rangers project, and there was yesterday a short discussion on that. And mutually, EDA is observer by a NATO cyber education project, which is run from one of the EU member states. We also mentioned already the cooperation with CERT and NCERC and the arrangements we are going to adopt. There are mutual briefings. I'm saying all this just to show that there are already a lot of things ongoing, but of course more has to be done. Reinforcing our capabilities and building cyber resilience is, however, only one angle to reduce cyber risks. Another angle is to encourage the international discussions on norms and principles of responsible behavior in cyberspace. Agreed international rules, principles, and norms will help to enhance both transparency and trust in state behavior. The EU is supporting these processes, and this has been identified in our cybersecurity strategy as well in recently adopted conclusions on cyber diplomacy. As discussed, and I think it will be discussed also today, we are still in the process of developing the norms of cyberspace, but I think we should also not forget that we are not starting from scratch. There should not be any ambiguity in relation to the possible existence of an international vacuum in this domain. And we often recall this during our EU bilateral cyber dialogues, which we conduct with other partners, and say that existing international law applies also in cyberspace. The EU considers that state behavior should follow the long-established principles of existing international law, and this is why we are not in favor of recent initiative to create a new law. The states, of course, should follow the issues of and aspects of proportionality, distinction, and other principles as set out in international humanitarian law. In the international security field, we value highly the work of the UN group of governmental experts to study the international application of law in cyberspace, to develop norms for state behavior, cooperative measures, to address existing and potential threats. We think that cooperation within existing international frameworks is and will be the most effective way to address these issues. Many important elements of applicability of law were articulated in the UN Government Expert Report in 2013. It's obvious that more work needs to be done. And in this context, we are looking forward to the next report, which is supposed to be adopted hopefully in June. You may know that there are 5 EU member states which are engaged in the current UN government expert work, and we are quite looking forward that there might be some good results. Now some remarks on confident building measures. In this context, the EU is engaged outside global at the regional level to develop cybersecurity confidence building measures. And we do think that since regional organizations bring together those states that are most likely to have difficult relations, they constitute a very good forum to develop confidence building measures. And I will mention 2 examples. One, of course, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the OSCE, and then also the Asian Regional Forum, the RF. The coordination of the EU and also like-minded states played an important role in the adoption of the first set of cyber confidence building measures in the OSCE in 2013. We do think this has already been a great success, and the implementation is continuing. The process in OSCE is going on. We are now to develop a second set of cybersecurity CBMs that has recently started, and we hope that it will enjoy the same success As I said, developing CBMs in other regional fora, such as the RF, is also a key priority for us to encourage the development of such measures in Asia has to be supported by the EU with the help of EU member states, and we are hoping to do a relevant workshop on that in Malaysia in 2015. We will also organize some work on cyber security CBMs this year with the help of the Netherlands, and that will be co-hosted also by our Asian partners. Now, finally, allow me some remarks on internet governance. The EU has adopted Council conclusions on internet governance, where all 28 EU member states stated that they support the multi-stakeholder model of internet governance. The EU is of the opinion that the internet should remain a free and open platform, accessible to all, where private sector, civil society, technical community, and the governments all are engaged and feed in with their expertise. The internet is just too important source for our societies to be captured by a more narrow political or commercial interest. Let us also be reminded that the open, flexible, and innovation-friendly environment has allowed for information and communication technologies, the ICTs, to develop faster than any other invention in modern history. For those reasons, we look very positively. We look very positively upon the ongoing transition of the stewardship of the core functions of the internet from the traditionally held contract with the US government to a new solution that involves all stakeholders from all over the world. ICT have also been key for further development in developing countries, which the UN reports connected to the 10 years review of the World Summit on Information Society Visas has shown. We hope to conclude that the Visas plus 10 later this year with an action-oriented, forward-looking agenda for bridging the digital divide, using ICT as a tool for achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals as set forth in the General Assembly. Let me conclude by saying we do think that we certainly have to build more trust and confidence in cyberspace, as well as we need the internet to stay interoperable and accessible. With that, I like to thank you, and I'm happy to take any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this comprehensive overview of the EU efforts. We have time to squeeze in a couple of questions. Yes, over there in the middle.
Thank you, sir. Vladimir Radunovic, Diplo Foundation. Particular question with regards to the World Summit on Information Society process. We're going to discuss internet governance more in the later panel afterwards, but the process which started or at some phase was developed as a multi-stakeholder process seems to now getting more and more locked into multilateral fora, as the WSIS event in end of this year will be in New York and most likely quite locked or closed for the governments. How do you see that development in terms and in relation to general conclusions here also that the whole process should actually be more open to stakeholders? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for that question. I do think that's, let's say, the basic discussion from the start with that process. We are, for the time being, within the European Union, discussing how we shape our opinion on that, and how in more detail we want to formulate the possible outcome and what we want to achieve with that. But one thing is clear, as I said, we want it to be multi-stakeholder, and as I said, that also involves to include all relevant partners in that process, and the European Union is certainly committed in further enhancing and supporting that approach.
Do I see a sea of hands?
Yeah.
Right
Back
there in
there.
the very back.
Thank you for the presentation. My name is Greg Austin from the East-West Institute. Could you say something about EU reactions to international commercial espionage and why EU policy on this looks so different from United States policy, especially towards China? Thank you.
First of all, again, thank you for that question. We have a sort of bilateral consultation with China in general on cyber related issues where we of course are promoting the approach that I was trying to set out here in that context. The issue of cyber espionage is indeed a challenging issue. The European Union has also in public statements taken a position on that, but of course it's a difference if you are individual state, and we have also individual member states in the EU who have given their opinions on that issue, then formulating that for the whole European Union. But it is certainly an issue which is closely monitored by the European Union institutions as well.
Thank you. Shall we take one last question for Mr. Roy? All right. You can ask the questions during the coffee break. So thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. May we have a present?
Thank you very much.